Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, sponsored by the IBCA. We are a global podcast that shares the passion for the coaching profession. You will hear the stories of coaches from all around the world. We are covering the profession in game, outside of the game, and anything in between. As always, thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing the coaches' stories with you.
On this episode of the After the Timeout podcast, we have Steve Pratt, owner and founder of Full Package Athletics. Coach, thanks for taking your time out of your busy day. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Excited to be here.
So we start every episode with the opening tip, letting our listeners get to know a little bit about you and kind of where you came from and where you are now. You know, you've had a lot of success at a lot of places. So kind of tell us about your journey, you know, where you are now, you know, your full package program and kind of how you got there.
All right. Well, the first thing to start off is I've had a lot of failure because, I wanted to be a baseball player, but I was 0 for Little League, so that ended. Then I was going to be a football player, and I played that all the way through high school, and then that didn't work out. And then I went on to play college basketball, and that journey of pursuing to become a good player in basketball is where I really developed my my just love of developing players. Because as I was working on becoming a coach, I was also developing myself as a player at the same time. So it was a kind of a unique way to kind of get introduced to the game, and it made me more kind of player centric in how I think about the game, which has been a real gift as a coach. So I started in Bennington, Vermont. I'm from Vermont, and then I started my coaching career when I redshirted as a junior, and there was a local coach named Bob Rowe who was amazing coach, an amazing mentor, amazing man, and he allowed me to come on his staff halfway through the year. They were undefeated. I called him up and said, "Hey, coach, you looking for any help?" And he said, "Yeah." He was which now, after being in the industry, I realize how ridiculous that is to have a guy who's in the middle of an undefeated season to take on some young college kid who doesn't know anything and just kind of looked after me along with the team. So he was unbelievably generous to me and really poured into me. And anything that I know that if I'm able to give anything back to people, which I'm trying to do, is that I've had so many really quality people pour into me. So that was part of the journey in the middle of Vermont, just having these great coaches pour into me. So then I finished my career and I got a job at the Cabot School. 275 kids in the whole school. I was the varsity coach. Graduated in May from college and started coaching in October. Started coaching hoops, high school hoops in October, and immediately led my team to a 3-8 record. And was sitting by myself with my hands, and I was trying to remember what Coach Rowe told me so that I could make the adjustment. So, and then I got fired from that job. Then I was an assistant college coach for Buddy Mahar, who was a brilliant coach, who poured into me too, just generously taught me all kinds of stuff, and I didn't know much. And I worked camp every summer for 7 years. I'd work Satch Sanders, Don Nelson camp, and I'd work PJ Carlesimo camp at Seton Hall, and I'd work at another camp, Hall of Fame camp, and I just was around basketball 10 weeks every summer, 10 hours a day. And I did that for 7 years through my college career and into the beginning of my coaching career. And then I got my second job at Hazen High School and was really fortunate there, had a great team, and we went on to win the state championship. And we played Bob Rowe in the state championship, which it was an interesting story, actually. And my assistant coach locked me in the coach's room and told me, we can't play man-to-man because I like to play man-to-man. He said, we can't do it because they beat us twice during the year. And I said, okay, well, then we're going to play triangle and two because I wanted to play some kind of man-to-man. So we were fortunate, was able to win, and then that run, and then I ran into a guy in an AU tournament, F. John, and he told me, hey, he was from Illinois, and he says, I do player development. I go, oh, I'm training players too. He said, well, come on out. So I flew out and I got a job with Rebound Sports in 1999. I met a guy named Todd Fine. Todd Fine runs the Prep Baseball Report and Top Tier Baseball now. Well, Full Package is Fine and Pratt. Todd Fine, Steve Pratt. We were working together at Rebound Sports. We left. We started Full Package. So it was Full Package Baseball, but then, it turned into Top Tier. We split. They came two different companies. And 25 years later, here I am.
So let's really dig into those really early years. You're in Vermont, you're a young coach, you're going to camps for 7 years as a young coach, and you're really learning and you're soaking up lessons. Todd and I have a lot of listeners who are young coaches, aspiring head coaches.
Yeah.
Let dig in for a minute. In those really early years for you, maybe what were some of the most important lessons that you learned, not only just about coaching, but maybe about yourself as a coach? I know you in your bio referred to yourself as a lousy young coach, but maybe we kind of, for our listeners, what were some of those in the camps and in those early Vermont years? What did you learn about yourself as a coach?
Well, I've always kind of viewed, well, from Coach Rowe, I can never repay him for what he's done for me. And the number one thing he did, and I learned, was he just cared about every single player, and he invested in every single player. And I try to do that on a day-to-day basis. I try to care about everybody in the room, and I try to find a job and a place for everybody in the room. And that is by far the best lesson I've ever gotten from anybody in any realm, is to look around the room and find a place and find value in everyone and help people find value and help them find value in each other and teach them to be encouraging. And Coach Rowe would stop a drill. The drill would be going full speed. Kids are working their butts off. He'd stop it. And he'd say, I just want to let you know that this effort in here is just amazing. It's inspiring. What you're doing right now is what builds championships. Great job. Get back to work. And then they just jump right back into the drill. And I learned to give compliments regularly and give encouragement where it's deserved and look for opportunities to coach every kid. And so that's just been the best advice I've ever gotten. And it's something I try to do to this day, every single day.
So let's dig into the founding of Full Package. I did not know. I'm a baseball guy too, so I know who Top Tier is. I know Coach Fine, tremendous organization. You have a tremendous organization.
Yeah.
But I guess let's start here, and we'll kind of build. You first get together, and you're like, hey, we're gonna start this. I guess kind of what was your mission, or maybe even like the landscape of what was going on, because I'm sure it was a lot different than it is now. Of filling in a need for that, or I mean, I'm thinking 25 years ago, like, that's probably when I was high school, wherever. It wasn't as prevalent, I would say. Like, there wasn't 8,000 travel teams and this and that. So
No.
kind of how did you go about starting that and your kind of mission and getting that momentum going to where you are now?
Well, they hired me to come in as a systems analyst and to look at how they could develop new products, youth sports products, and develop products, and then get them to market. And so I said, hey, we should start travel teams. They said, nah, we're not going to do that. I said, okay. So I studied all the bios of everybody in the company. There was about 6, and Todd was like the day-to-day operations guy. Like, he was basically trying to manage the company. And I was like, oh, you pitched at Michigan State? And Todd had the best sports resume of anybody on the thing. And I'm like, Todd, you doing baseball lessons? He goes, well, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, you should start doing lessons. And I said, I told the Rebound Sports, I said, we should do baseball. He said, no, we can't do baseball. There's no money in it. That's what they told me. I'm like, so like I would bring them ideas and they would tell me no. And so we did a clinic at the Final Four. I called some friends and we got connected and we did a clinic in Indianapolis. And Todd looked at me. He goes, we could do this on our own. I'm like, you are correct. And then a few months later, we left Rebound and we started Full Package. So that's how it went. But Todd and he was an unbelievable teacher. He is an outstanding teacher.
Yeah.
I love watching him teach. He was just really good, connects with people really well. And so for me, it was just great. Like I want to be around good teachers, and he was a great teacher. And then, obviously both programs have gone on to do amazing stuff.
So let's talk the full package aspect a little bit more, and maintaining the longevity. One, I guess, how have you kind of adjusted with the changes and looked at that? But two, kind of what has always been your base of, you're big on the development. I can see that. So that's probably part of it. But like, how have you kept that momentum going and with those kids, especially now as it's gotten the later years of a very fluid situation a lot of times because you're one of the top programs around. And any of our listeners don't know, top tier and full package, top notch. You don't want to have to go play them anywhere because you're in for a dogfight.
Well, and this is something I learned when I got here over years. This is one of the most competitive youth sports markets on the planet. Chicagoland is one of the most competitive youth sports market on the planet. I mean, there are like quality coaches, quality programs, and it's competitive. There's, so when you have that kind of competition, it helps you grow. Like I was an aggressive student because I wanted to be a great player. I didn't want to just play basketball. I wanted to be a great player. So I was studying the best. I was watching TV. I was mimicking moves because there were no trainers. There was no basketball trainers when I grew up. There were basketball coaches. And then there was, you go play for your basketball coach. That's what you do. And then you go to summer camp, you go to 5-star. So, I came up and I was learning to be a player as a young adult. I was like 18, 19, 20. But I just studied it. And then I was coaching as I was working on becoming a player. So then I developed all these like systems of development, shooting, ball handling, finishing, conditioning, and then how to combine them. Because then when I was a coach, I had no resources. I was the strength coach. I was the feeder program. I was the defensive coach. I had to do everything at a small school with no resources. So, I was running camps for little kids from the schools I was at. And as I got better and I started looking around, I went to this thing called Don Meyer. There's a gentleman, Don Meyer. He's a great coach, Hall of Fame coach. And he ran a camp in Lipscomb for college coaches. And so a buddy of mine called him and said, "Hey, we got this coach." And so I came in and I worked their college camp as a development guy. And I looked around and these were supposed to be the best people, the best people, the best coaches in the country. And I looked around at like in terms of teaching shooting, ball handling. And I was like, okay, I'm competitive on a national level. I could see it, I could see my work. And so then I said, well, I need to get to a bigger area because in Vermont, I was doing it in front of farmers. And my brother came out and he said, well, the difference in Chicago is now you're doing it in front of sports agents. When you were in Vermont, you were doing it in front of farmers. So it's kind of like, you just got to the right place. And then I'm an aggressive student to this day. I'm trying to get better. My coaches are always laughing because I always send them videos and clips of drills and motivational stuff on leadership. But I was just an aggressive coach. I just wanted to be good. And I met Mark Bartelstein. I was training his son, his 9-year-old son, Josh. And he was my first real client. And now Josh is the CEO of the Phoenix Suns. And Mark, said, "Hey, I want you to train Bryce Drew." So then I was training Bryce Drew. And then I said, "Hey, I got to get these guys ready for the draft." And then I did that for like a decade. I got guys ready for the draft. But it was all the same stuff I was teaching, 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th graders in Vermont. But I was just doing it in Chicago in a different environment, different competitive environment. And, basketball is basketball, right? It's a fundamental game. It's a fundamental game. You got to get the fundamentals down, then you got to learn how to apply them and make reads.
So I do want to follow up on something Todd kind of brought up because it is a pretty special thing, Coach. You kind of mentioned being around full package, having founded a company. Other founders come, other founders go, other people start programs off of your program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for 25 years. How would you recommend someone kind of starts an AAU program, but more importantly, how do they maintain it for 25 years?
Well, it's always about the people, right? And about investing in people. I've got guys who've coached with me that have been with me for over 20 years, for 23, 24 years. Dominic Pavel's been with me for 24 years. He's assistant up at Antioch. Lewis Walker, he's an assistant at Oakton Community College. He's been with me for over 20 years. And you invest in them and you find good people and you invest in them and You build. I guess the way to do it is I just didn't make it about me. I've tried to make it about other people. I've tried to invest in other people in terms of how I coach. And you can't do it by yourself. You cannot. You cannot. You just can't do it by yourself. Nobody does. Kobe Bryant didn't do it by himself. Michael Jordan didn't do it by himself. Now they did a lot of the work and they were responsible and they drove it. And I think it comes from Coach Rowe. Coach Rowe just was so inclusive that I've always just tried to be that person, to not just about winning and losing, but it's about how do you help people grow and how do you give people confidence in themselves and how do you give them skills. And so I just try to invest in people. I'm trying to invest in people. I'm always looking for people I can help. And again, I'll never be able to repay Coach Rowe for what he's done for me in my life, but I can try to help other people. And that's really my philosophy, is to develop. When I first started out, we were just doing teams and kids, but what's happened is I've really become a coaching development company on top of a player development company. So we've just been developing coaches. Whoever wants to become a good coach, we just try to invest in them and help them.
And that is definitely what we're going to get into in the second half of the episode. But before that, I want to talk about your experience running a JUCO. Todd and I have talked to a couple of JUCO coaches, and to run a JUCO, you got to be a little nuts, because, as you said, you kind of got to do a little bit of every role. Well, maybe talk to our listeners a little bit about your experience running a junior college program at Oakton.
Well, it's funny because when I came here, I just started doing youth basketball, and I started with a 12-year-old boys team with Josh. And then I started like a 13-year-old team with Kristen Cartwright, Bill Cartwright's daughter, and Jenny Eckhart from Carmel Catholic. They're both great players. They went on to play at Northwestern. Jenny played at Syracuse, then transferred to Northwestern. So I started these youth teams. And then the competition was, they'd spread rumors that, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's blah, blah, blah. So I'm dealing with all this. And this was before social media, really. So I was thinking about, how can I prove that I'm a good coach? And the Oakton athletic director had researched what I was doing with NBA players and all this. And I was just dealing with like the Chicago negative marketing campaign. And so I was thinking about, how do I like prove it? And the guy approached me, Dave Cole, about becoming the Oakton coach. And, I said, yeah, that would be a good platform. And so then I said, well, how am I going to get players? They were 1-29. They were 1-29. So I said, okay. He approached me in like April. So now I got to try to recruit. So what I did is I looked through like the Chicago Public Schools handbook, and I looked at all the blue and the white and the red. I just looked at all the different leagues, and I figured, you know what? I can do player development. I just got to get athletes and kids that want to play. And so I reached out to Phillips. I reached out to Taft. I reached out to Prosser. I just reached out to all these public schools where nobody was recruiting their kids. And a kid that ended up being the regional champion for me, the regional MVP when we won the regional championship, Gerard Tucker, was from Prosser High School. And this is a true story. I went to the CPS All-Star game, and he wasn't there. And I was supposed to see him. I said, hey, where's Gerard Tucker? He said, oh, he's sick. He's in the hospital. I literally, the next day, went to the hospital and I recruited him out of his hospital bed. That's a true story. So, and then Tyler Carr, who played at Taft, they went on to, these guys were all conference for me, and they were just great players. And then my buddies, started sending me players. Chris Head, who knew me from AAU, said, hey, I heard you took over a junior college. I got these two twins for you, Quentin and Quincy Crosby. They came. They were awesome. They played their butts off. Quentin, I didn't even know his name. I had so many kids in the beginning. One of my coaches goes, hey, what about that guy? He looks like he's got enthusiasm. Should we put him in the game? I'm like, yeah, what's his name? I go, I don't know. And we sub him in the game, and he became captain of the team. So it was really chaotic. We just had so many kids. We went, I probably had 50 kids come in and out of the gym throughout the summer. Probably had 30 show up on campus. And then we just opened the gym and coached and taught and, went through it. We went from, they were 1-29 when I took over, and we were 22-12 and won the conference championship. And then the next year we won like 20 games in a row, and we won the regional championship. And just great kids. We just kept getting kids in and coaching them up and letting them play a lot of basketball until we figured out what the rotations were going to be. So I kind of just created it like I did full package. I just kind of opened the gym, invite them all in, let them fight it out, move forward. and then staff, and then I was always adding guys to the staff too. So
I like that you recruited a kid out of the hospital. That's awesome. That's. I mean, but I coached JUCO for a while too. I coached at Harper, but that's what I was doing. Like, where can I find this kid under this rock and that rock, and
yeah,
you know.
we actually had great battles with Harper because Ed Potter Jr. was the coach there.
Yeah.
And he had a great team. Actually, it was my most fun team to watch when I was recruiting. I just was so fascinated with how they defended in the half court and how they ran stuff. And so I was at all. We ended up splitting with him that year. But I mean, he did such a good job. He went to the national tournament that year, and they came in top 5 in the country. But so I got to become friends with Eddie, and he was a great coach. So that was fun.
All right, so let's talk about your high school experience. You took over programs at Hope and Westinghouse, and we've been asking a lot of our guests lately, and maybe you can apply this to the other things, the JUCO jobs and things like that. But and you kind of explained why you took the JUCO job, but those are kind of two very different jobs, right? So what was your kind of decision making and why you decided to take those jobs? What was intriguing to you? What was what where were you at in life, whatever it may be, what were those jobs about, and why were you interested in it?
Well, the Hope job, I was recommitting myself to I'm a Christian, I follow Christ, and I was thinking, okay, this is a chance for me to kind of give back. And so there was a young woman that was going to be the head coach, and I just offered to be her assistant. And I met with Bob Muzikowski, great guy. He started Hope. And so then I'd already done work in that area. I'd done some player development and strength and conditioning, and just kind of being a friend with Coach Lewis Thorpe. So when I was recruiting all those kids to the JUCO, I got to meet these guys in the city, and Coach Thorpe was one of my friends. God rest his soul. We became really close friends. I trained his son, his daughter, and so I was involved with North Lawndale. So then I was in that area where Hope is. And then I went over and I was going to be the assistant. And then a week before the season, the young woman got a job in California. So I became the head coach. And we didn't have a roster. So I had to go in the lunchroom and convince kids to play. I'll never forget Bree Campbell. She ended up blocking probably 1,000 shots for me. She gets in my face. She's 6'2", and she goes, "I'm going to play, but I'm not going to run." And I just straight lied to her. I said, "Yep, you're never gonna have to run. Don't worry about it. You won't have to run." I just went with it.
That's awesome.
I just put her on the right, and just kind of slowly tricked her into running.
Yeah, we'll work on that part later, right?
Yep, you won't have to run. I just straight. Yep, nope, you're right. You won't have to run. So the first year I was there was a rough year, and then the second year we got to the conference championship, and the girls really rallied, and it was fun. It was a fun group of girls. So that was good. I did that for 2 years.
That's awesome. So let's go. We call this halftime adjustments. I want to go a couple ways with it. I want to start with you mentioned, and I'm right there with you, the player development piece. I'm helping my daughter's team, and that's kind of what I do, and I really enjoy that. But I feel like, especially in the AU circles, that's kind of been a lost focus, I guess, right? Not necessarily from the coaches, but from when people are looking at programs, right? They're not looking at, hey, am I going to get better or this or that? They're looking at, what are you going to do for me, right? Can I get a scholarship? Can I get this? Can I get that? When in reality, the player development piece is the most important piece, right? Because I think this will dovetail into my second part of this question. But so how have you kind of, obviously you're well established in this and that, but how would you suggest somebody that maybe, they're interested in basketball, they want the best interest of the kids, to promote that idea and you talked about taking care of the people and this, that, but to promote that idea and get that idea back of, hey, especially at younger ages, my daughter's in 5th grade. She's playing right now, but I talk to all the time, just it's about development. It's about getting better. So how would you kind of pitch that idea, and how do you pitch that idea to parents and people who are bringing kids into your program?
Well, man, there's a lot there. That's a big question.
Sorry, I gave you a loaded question.
Well, no, it's good. I think just teaching kids to love the game at a young age. like our job is to help them with their relationship with the game and to feel good about their relationship with the game. So we got to provide an environment that's encouraging. So encouragement is not a choice at Full Package. Being kind is not a choice. We expect you to be a ruthless warrior when we're playing games, but when we're working together and in practice, you need to be encouraging your teammates. You need to be celebrating your teammates. You need to be finding good in your teammates. And so that's not just all coming from the coach. It's about how to label, hey, that's a good pass. That's a good decision. Good effort. Nice try. Get back in the play. So that you teach the kids to encourage and build relationship. I think I noticed this in volleyball. And for me, I struggle with volleyball because a lot of the volleyball culture is to talk to kids about just playing one sport at that and in their club teams. And I don't think that's healthy personally. For any basketball, baseball, anything, telling kids 13 and under to focus on one sport, you're actually doing them a disservice. The one thing I've noticed with volleyball, I watch high level volleyball, and they do immediate affirmation, positive affirmation when a kid makes a play. And I just think that is so powerful when you're encouraging your teammate on the spot when they do things well, and you're celebrating your teammate when they do well. And we try to do that as much as we can in basketball. Basketball is more of a free flowing sport, and it's more, there's not a break after every point, right? So, but that's something we try to really work on. How do you encourage each other? Like, not just make stuff up, like real stuff. And when I first started Full Package, it was interesting. We'd circle up, and the best player on the team wasn't getting a compliment. And I just watched the practice, and the kid dominated. And I say, hey, that's just not true. We have to tell the truth about everybody. That means we got to give compliments to the best player and compliments to whatever player does well, but we're not going to exclude anybody. And I so just think being inclusive in your language and how you teach the kids to communicate to each other and having a standard of kindness and encouragement, it makes it a fun place to play. It adds energy. And I think that's probably the biggest thing we do is we encourage, and we hold them accountable to be encouraging and label good plays and good behavior.
Well, and I would assume, using my context, because that goes a long way as well when you have to make a correction for something that, you know, that happens along the way.
Yeah, and when I was a younger coach, and I can correct pretty intensely, and I probably got
Like that.
I got a real reputation probably for that. And my coaching staff now, because a lot of these guys have been coached by me, they're always telling stories. They're always telling stories about you. What I've really learned is when it comes to coaching the game, I want to do it without emotion. Now, behavior, if you're misbehaving, you're treating somebody poorly, or you're being selfish, I'm going to go at that hard. But, and especially with young kids, I think you don't want to go at them hard at all much, unless they're misbehaving. And then you want the punishment to fit crime. So I just think when you make corrections, how do you give them a solution, and how do you give them a path to make the correction? I think that's really important. It's that you don't want to just get caught labeling the mistake that already happened. You actually want to work forwards to the solution. And that's something I'm still working on, right? Because I can sit there saying, how do you miss a layup? And yelling at a kid for missing a layup, they're not trying to miss the layup. So for me to yell, hey, make your layup, I'm pretty sure they're trying to make the layup, it's been a learning curve for me too, to try to, be positive, be encouraging, find the solution, and coach the path to correction, and not personalize it or come in too heavy. I've had to work on my delivery. So I had a freshman girl from Oak Park, River Forest, Mikhail Thompson. Her dad played football at Northwestern. And I said, I yelled at her for something, she did something. And I go, do you understand? She goes, well, I don't understand your delivery. So I thought that was awesome. I was like, so it made me think, like, maybe I should work on my delivery.
Right, so the second part I want to go into is kind of finding that balance, right? You have your kids in the summer, you're training them, right? And then they're going to go play for a high school team, right? And their coach has these certain expectations. And obviously there's fundamentals and things like that. But how do you work to try to find that balance of things maybe that they have been told they need to work on for their high school team, but also, working as your program to make them the best player they can.
Well, first and foremost, and I tell kids all the time, we are preparing you here. We have our team experience here, but we're preparing you to go back into your communities and to do good work, to be a good teammate, to be a good leader, to be coachable. And like if you're going to call me, you better be, I'm not taking complaints on coaches. Okay. And I'm not no, that's your boss. You better figure out how to play for them, period. And my job is to support you in supporting that coach in their mission. And I think high school sports helped save my life. Playing high school sports, high school coaches, some of the first people to believe in me, my freshman football coach, Bob Baroni, I'll never forget him. I was a lunatic, an absolute lunatic. And the other coach was like, let's get rid of this wild man. And he said, no, we're going to keep him. I see something in him. And so I'm indebted to high school coaches. So that's kind of how I run my business. And I know what high school sports did for me. So I want to support that in all our kids. I want them having that experience and becoming parts of those communities and adding value to those communities. I mean, that's period. They should be, if you're a senior, you should be looking after the freshmen at your school, and you should be encouraging them and inspiring them, just like you do at Full Package. Be encouraging, be a good teammate, and become look. High school sports, I think, has given our country such an edge in terms of developing citizens that can work through failure, work through success, build. I mean, for me, high school sports is one of the best things in our whole country. So, and when I see clubs and people trying to get kids not to play high school sports, or I see high schools that aren't investing in that, I get really frustrated with that. I just think it's such a great. It was for me. It was such a gift and such a great learning tool that I want everybody to have that opportunity to play some kind of high school sport.
So I think that's a perfect lead in to our second half of the show. And for our listeners, if this is your first listen with our guests, we always focus on a topic the second half of the show. For Coach Pratt, we're going to focus on developing a program and coaching coaches on your staff and players. So let's start at the very basic. You're taking over a program, whether it's a JUCO program, an AAU program, a high school program. What are you doing to lay that foundation? To lay that foundation of your program, even before you even hire a coach or get a player? What is the foundation you're laying?
Well, I mean, first you got to look at the area. You got to look at the region that you want to start in, or you're going to go work in. So the school, and you do research on that. You find out, what's the culture, and then you got to figure out how you can adapt and build your program within that culture. I think you got to be respectful of that. I know when I got to Oakton, Rich Bolander was the women's coach there and did a great job. And so I just looked at myself as I'm going to help every coach there. I got to know the volleyball coach. I got to know the soccer coach, Steve Brody, great. And so I got to meet all the coaches and become part of the culture. And that's what I looked to do. I wanted to be part of the school. And so we did a mentoring program where our students, the president of the college mentored a kid, the dean of students mentored a kid. So I looked at how I could integrate my program with the school so that we added value to the school and the school added value to my program. And so I had a bunch of teachers in the school that were mentoring my kids. It was awesome. It was a really cool experience. And so I think you got to think about that. What's the culture and how can you fit your program in to add value to where you're going? So that's the first thing I would say. Do your research. And then, you gotta be able to have good people around you. You can't do it all yourself. So you got to figure out who you're gonna build it with. And pick well, I pick integrity over somebody that's like an aggressive, good coach. If they don't have integrity, it's never going to go well. So you got to pick people that have character. So, and at Full Package, I'm really fortunate. I got Jimmy Russo, wonderful old coach, does a great job. Andy Jusick was an AD. Now he works. So I get people. Mike Steffens, guy's been coaching. He's been coaching so long. Doug Bruno was his assistant at his first high school job at St. Francis. And so I'm trying to recruit quality people to come alongside and be part of the program. And I think you got to look for that. You got to look for older coaches, and you got to look for young, energetic coaches. You got to look for a balance on your staff. But I think building your staff and recruiting for that is part of it.
So you talked about leading your program a lot. I'm going to talk about AAU in general a little bit. How can
You sure you want to go there? You sure you want to go
Well,
down?
no, it's a deep topic, but right, there's so many good programs, and then there's so many others that have the best intentions, right? They're
Yes.
trying to help kids, but then you know as well as I do, there's all kinds of other nonsense, right? So
Yeah.
how can we, I guess maybe just a start, like in your ideas, how can we start to kind of improve it and make it a positive situation for all? I'm not even talking about the switching the teams or anything, just in general, like maybe formats or how we go about things. You know what I mean? I don't have the answers to it either. You're a lot more experienced than I, but maybe some of your ideas of things we can do better to try to have the best interest of the kids and help the kids, because that's the ultimate goal of AAU, to give them the opportunity, whether it's to get an education and also play basketball or have the opportunity to make that their career, whatever it may be.
Well, I think in anything, right, there's a lot of good coaches and good people involved in travel sports. There are also people that it's a $10 billion industry. Youth sports in America is a $10 billion industry. So there are people that are in it to make a living, and that's what they want to do. And that's fine. I don't have no. I think for me, anytime I try to support as many coaches as I can, as many people from different clubs as I can. I mean, I try to find the good young coaches, encourage them, and tell them good job. I want more good clubs. I want more good coaches coaching kids, and so I try to encourage that. I try to encourage, you know, the positive things that other people are doing. I try to encourage it. There just has been it's just getting the parents to sign up for games. We're going to go play games. You're going to do these practices, and they go play these games, and then these games that mean nothing. And I just think playing for nothing is just not. It's just not true. I've got a few of these medals sitting over here from one-day shootouts. They're just not. It's not really what it's about. Playing for something, playing in a league. I think playing for a championship, that there's value to that. But if you're just everybody's just kind of like there's pretend championships every weekend, it's hard. It's hard to like when there's the parents that don't have any experience in youth sports are having children every single day, and they don't know what they're doing. And so people can take advantage, and they try to get them, any club sport. I'm not going to label any sport, but it's telling 8 and 9-year-old kids to pick one sport now and really train for it so you can get a scholarship. I mean, that is a lie. It's just not true. And most of those kids end up burnt out and not happy and don't even like the game anymore. And so I just think there's so many people manipulating and taking advantage of people in so many different ways, that the confusion is the hard part. So if I was telling a parent, and if I'm telling somebody you want to start a club, be a good coach. Be a good coach and treat people really well. If you want to start a program, be a good coach, hire good people, and treat people well. And if you're a parent and you're a customer, find a coach and program that supports your values that you want your child to have. Don't take a risk and go be in a risky program because you think that's going to get your kid recruited. Or don't put your kid with a coach that's beating your kid down emotionally because you think that wearing the emblem of that team is important. It's not. What's important is your child. What's important is the kid. Find the right people, find the right coaches. And a lot of these programs have good coaches. It's whether do you have the right coach for your kid? Do you have the right program for who your family wants to be? And I think you got to search for that, and that's what I try to look for. I'm looking for people that care. Dimitri Pershin, he runs our boys program. He said this, and it was so right. We're looking for coaches that have the right heart. we're looking for coaches that have the right heart. And I think that is just a vital component to this. Do they care? So
I'm going to add to that a little bit. It's something I've always thought about. Jon and I's backgrounds. I coach in Bellwood. Jon coaches or teaches in Melrose Park. I teach in Bellwood. How can we provide more opportunities? Like you said, it's a multi-million-dollar business. How can we provide more opportunities for kids who may not have as much resources as others to have those same opportunities that maybe, like you said, could change their life, right? They find a coach, they find a passion, and now, maybe school wasn't a priority, but now they realize that school's a priority, or it helps them with trying to get their stuff together, right? How can we find something to help those kids as well, and provide more opportunities for people who may not have the resources, just to say, oh yeah, I can pay for this training and that training and that training.
Yeah, no, it's been a challenge I've had. That's why I went down in North Lawndale and I worked with Coach Thorpe. I love Coach Thorpe. God rest his soul. He was a good friend and did really great work down in the inner city. And then the Hope Academy, they've started a school. What I found is, look, any kid that can get to me, I'll train them. For kids, they don't have the transportation. They can't
No
get to
doubt.
you.
No doubt.
So I think, and I've said this to my friends in coaching, but like, how do we go down and help develop and support kids in the inner city? And I haven't found the answer to that yet. I just haven't. I wherever, if a coach calls me up, like Coach Thorpe called me up, I go down, look at his team, give him feedback, put his kids through workouts. But I just don't get those calls very much.
Yeah.
So, I think you got to bring the resources to those kids in those communities. I think getting those kids out of those communities is hard. Like, the best players will get plucked out, right?
Yeah.
Then all the other kids, the other 99% are left.
Yep.
And I think we got to care about everybody, all 100%. That's how I feel. But
No doubt.
it's a challenge. I don't have an answer.
I don't have a good one
But
either.
if you guys come up with one, I'm in. I'll help. I want to help. I'll help any coach, and any coach who wants to be mentored, I'll try to help them for sure, 100%. I owe that to Coach Rowe. Coach Rowe changed my life.
So that's your last sentence is perfect, and it leads into a topic you and I have texted about off the air. You and I have talked about off the air, and that's the development now of coaches, and not just player development, not just working with players, but developing coaches. So I kind of want to ask this to you in two parts. One, why has this become such a mission for you to develop other coaches? And two, Todd and I have talked to lots and lots of people, both on air and off the air, about this coach's burnout. And you see now coaches take over a high school program, take over whatever kind of program, 3 years, 4 years. I got to get out. I can't do this anymore. So my two parts is, why is this so important to you? And maybe second, how do we just keep the young coaches in the profession involved working with athletes?
It's a big question. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Well, I think in today's climate, where, everybody's got a platform and everybody's got an opinion, and if the child suffers some parents that maybe are politically connected or have economic resources, they can then start to hunt a coach. And it's very sad. It's sad for the kid of that parent, to be honest with you, because instead of that kid dealing with failing or being disciplined, they're being given excuses that it's not their fault, it's the coach's fault. And whether the coach is right or wrong, outside of like absurd abuse, doesn't really matter. The child has to work through the challenges of working for a boss. And I just feel that so many coaches and teachers feel attacked, that it takes away, how should I say this? It takes away from them pushing the envelope in education or in sport to really challenge the player. And so now there's lost opportunities that nobody even sees because the coach is playing it safe. the teachers playing. And I'm going to put teachers and coaches together on this because I think teachers are going through the same thing, and I just think that they're getting pushed into situations where they don't feel like they have a voice in running their own class, or they don't have a voice in coaching their own team, and it limits what's actually happening and what's being done, in terms of productivity within a team or within a classroom. And I think it's a real challenge, not just in our local area, but I think it's a nationwide problem.
Well, you're talking to two teachers here, and coaches, so amen to that, Coach.
Yeah. So how do you build? That's why I think like athletic directors really need to be working with all the coaches together. I think you got to there's power in numbers, right? So if everybody's working together, I think you got to come strategies where you have it's not just one, there's a whole army. And so when people come up and they look to manipulate or attack a teacher or coach, then that teacher or coach is protected by the herd.
Well, and I say this all the time. I think about when I was in high school, right? I played 3 sports, and we talked about this earlier. And all the coaches, now some of the coaches crossed over or whatever, but they all made it work, right? Like I would go to football camp from 6 to 9. They knew I had basketball, so they'd let me leave to go to basketball to do that, and then I had baseball, and it made it work, right? Whereas I don't feel like that's part of it too. I don't feel like that's a big thing anymore either. There's a lot of, hey, we got to specialize, we got to be here, we got to be that, and I think we all got to get together and make it work. And if we're all on the same page, all these coaches kind of have consistent expectations, then you can't go to one person and say, oh, this and then that, and it's all the same message.
And I also think the tighter the athletic community is, where everybody's supporting each other, there's lots of witnesses, there's lots of, it just can repel a lot of the crap. That's just some parent is worried about their kid and they start making phone calls and sucking up the time of the whole school, either in a classroom or from a team. I think you just got to shut some of that down. Kids got to work through stuff. They got to work through getting disciplined. They got to work through failing. They got to work through their mistakes, and they don't need to be defended by their parents. If I get a call like my daughter got thrown out of school, you think I'm calling the principal? No, me and my daughter are going to talk about, oh, what'd you do? Like it's like, okay, now how are we going to fix it? Like how are me and you going to fix it? Not what the school did wrong. I don't even care if the school did screw up. I'm going to talk to her how she got herself in that situation. That's going to be my conversation. But unfortunately, I think people get twisted and they try to defend their kids, and life is a journey, right? You want them to take the journey. So,
all right, so let's have some fun here. I'll tweak this one a little bit. First, we're talking player development, okay? Let's talk top 3 things that we need, I guess maybe as a base. What do you use starting with the top 3 things, and we'll kind of develop off from there.
Well, I mean, the number one drill, like to assess and to kind of evaluate, is to see kids playing one-on-one. So zigzag one-on-one is my first drill. I think if you're a young coach, you're starting a program, full court one-on-one, zigzag one-on-one. Duke University, Coach K did it every day, every practice. There was zigzag one-on-one, like work on how you turn your hips, how you handle the ball against pressure. So that's the number one thing. I think you got to not just develop a skill, but develop it with defense. And you're developing defense and offense at the same time. So the number one drill for player development in my mind is zigzag one-on-one. Like that's just the best because you got ball handling, you got making reads against the defender, and then you got a defender making reads against the offensive player. That's the number one thing. Then if you can shoot it, get your fundamental shooting down, get a routine, develop your own form shooting routine, and then you got to develop a game pace routine. And then you got to play micro games, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3. That's how you develop as a shooter. And then you get into 5-on-5 games. So then that would be, and then also the ability to handle the ball. If you could, especially in today's game too, the ability to handle the ball. But a lot of people make a mistake because they teach kids how to handle the ball without vision. So I think you have to teach them how to handle the ball and see, and then make decisions with their handle, when to attack, when to deliver the ball, when to reset the offense. So I think as you develop a handle, you got to develop his vision and then decision making. So those would be the three things I'd say that I would need if I'm trying to build a program or build a player. Those are the kind of circumstances I'm going to put him in.
So then let's go to shooting, right? Because everybody likes to shoot, everybody likes to score, right? So we're building a shooter. Maybe let's say, I don't know, you can pick an age, a young age where they're kind of strong enough to kind of do things, like second graders can't really, maybe some can, but like
say 10
like
years old. Say 10 years old.
10 years old. My daughter is 10 years old. Perfect example. She's strong enough. What are we starting with? How are we developing that good shooting base?
Well, first of all, we work on finishing layups, right? Get the layups, and so you see the ball go through the net, build your confidence. So first of all, the layup is the first shot you develop. How to make a layup, because you can get a layup out of offenses, you can get a layup off of defensive breakdowns, you can get layups off transition. So the first thing, teach a kid how to make a layup. Different ways to make layups. First thing. Now, form shooting. It used to be kind of one way. I used to teach off just two fingers, but because of Steph Curry, he'll shoot off of one. So I think how the ball comes off your hand and then your base. So you got to get your feet to the rim. Once you get your feet, it's like synchronizing the energy from your feet all the way up. But then the most important thing is how you finish and then how the ball comes off your fingers. So you either got to figure out if you're a one finger shooter or if you're a two finger shooter. And so then I try to play with that with kids until they get a feel for that. So I had a kid tonight and I put him into one finger shooting and it really went well. And that comes from Steph Curry, by the way. One of my coaches, DeMonte Robinson, who went on, he's coached the Seattle Storm this year. He taught me that about Steph Curry and the one finger shooting. And I had to look at it and evaluate it. And so it's right. It was a good system of teaching. So, because there's some science to shooting, but there's also some art, and there's always some leeway. You got to kind of give people freedom to kind of find their rhythm with their biomechanics.
Oh, that's super interesting. I'm gonna pick your brain after this episode on that one and two finger shooting. So let's go to last two segments. 30-second timeout. Your dime, your dance floor. You can anything you want to discuss. Your platform. You can make your campaign speech since it's election time, right? But it's a very loose 30 seconds. The referee's not coming over after 10 seconds of a timeout and he's on his 12th game and saying, hey, we got to get out. So you can flip it on us, whatever you want to talk about, it's your floor.
I think that I just want to say with the social media and you guys doing this podcast, I want to say thank you, because I think giving people a platform to kind of learn and grow. Like I've been watching some of your podcasts. I watched Mike Neighbors, who I'm a fan of. I followed him at Washington, so I listened to that podcast. That was great. And obviously Coach Berg, who I worked with, brilliant coach and just an absolute great friend. So I just think what you guys are doing and what social media, I've got to learn from you guys. And I'm trying. This is where I'm behind as an old man. I've got to kind of get up to speed on it and how you implement social media in a positive way. I see so many people being attacked, and like, really, we're gonna go after LeBron James. Really? Like, that guy plays the game the right way. He's given his, you see him in the Olympics, and then you think of all the critics this guy's got to deal with. And so for me, I think having positive social media platforms like what you guys provide is a real gift. And hopefully at Full Package, we can move in that direction too, in the social media world, where it's really kind of not been our game. We just kind of really coach people and work with people, and now we've got to look at it. But you guys and people like you that are having positive platforms of learning and promotion of the game, I really appreciate. So I want to applaud you guys. So thanks for that.
Well, it's funny, I'm smiling because I think Todd and I in the Mike Neighbors episode could have gone about 3 hours just on random lists of everything he has in his life. So,
well, I love the fact that he started out his first coaching job. He was 1-24.
Yep.
How about that? His first head job. So for any of you young coaches that are going to listen to this, your record is not, how you start is not how you finish. And just getting started and getting involved. And, the more young people we can get into coaching, the better. I just think Mike's story is just such a great story. And in fact, you guys told that story. So kudos to you guys.
The last segment we call quick hitters. This is where sometimes Todd likes to say the wheels fall off. This is just our opportunity to have some fun with our guests at the end on air. So first one we have, you were a CPS coach. So what's one of your better CPS coaching stories?
Okay. Well, this is great. You guys, I thought about that. I saw that. I read that in the email. I was like, okay, I got it. The job at Westinghouse, and which I was excited. Bill Curry was the men's coach there, and his daughter Avery was on the girls team. And and the job opened up, so I applied. And my assistant was a guy named Lamar Money Mundane, and he was a security guard at school. And he's in the Reebok commercials back in the day. He's a great shooter from Chicago. Played in all the men's leagues. He played in college. I think he dropped 40 on Missouri, beat Norm Stewart at Missouri like in the 80s or something. But he's like a legend. So he was there, and he's an old, tough coach. And so he was my assistant. He was great. So we're going for our first game, and we're going to play Michelle Clark. Westinghouse playing Michelle Clark. We weren't in the red at this time. We were on the level below it. So I think we were the white or the blue. So, but if we win, we get to play in the red. The red is the top league in the CPS. You want to be in the red, and we weren't. So Michelle Clark was supposed to be the number one team. It was our first game of the year. So we get on the bus and we drive to Michelle Clark. They've got a mascot. They've got a DJ. The place is packed, and it is bananas. The JV game is going, and they got a 6'1" point guard playing JV. I'm like, oh, man, we're in trouble. Like, we are in trouble. And on the way there, one of my assistants, Edward Weissio, says to me, he goes, 24 is the magic number. If you have 24 turnovers, you're probably going to lose. But if you have less than 24, the chances are you're going to win. I'm like, hey, thanks, Edward, because Edward's a numbers guy. So he's running the numbers by me as we're on the bus. So we pull in. The JV game goes late. Now we start the varsity game. And it is a brawl. Because I play anybody that's ever seen my teams play, we try to play very aggressive, very physical, full court press, create chaos and get a lot of possessions and try to wear people down. Well, I mean, it's a slugfest. It's a turnover fest, right? Like balls are flying all over the place. And I noticed in the third quarter that the bus driver and my assistant, Lamar Mundane, are in this heated conversation while this game is going on, this epic battle of turnovers back and forth. And the girls are giving everything up. Both teams are just scrapping it, going after it. And Coach Mundane comes down and goes, I go, Coach, what's going on? He goes, well, the bus driver says that the time's up and he's wants to leave, but because the game is going so long, I had to talk him into staying so he can give you guys a ride back to Westinghouse. So this is actually happening in the game. So we end up winning the game, and we go on to win the league, and the girls and Westinghouse is still in the red division to this day. So I go to Edward, we get on the bus, and it was amazing. I was like, man, I was so excited. I never had another game like that again. That was the only game I had. Like, it was awesome. Like the crowd, the mascot, it was the DJ, everything was great. So I get in the bus and we're driving back. Thankfully, the bus driver stayed to give us a ride back to Westinghouse. And I said, hey, Edward, how'd we do with that 24 turnovers? Oh, he goes, we blew by that in the first half. So there's my my CPS story. I mean, it was a wonderful time. Those girls played so hard for us, and we wanted to win a championship, which was really cool. And so that was good.
So much for those analytics, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
All right. The best player you ever coached against, male or female?
Oh, that's easy. When before we had a high school team, I was training some high school boys, and there was going to be a high school tournament at Loyola University. And so I got some T-shirts, and a kid named Andy Linton, who played at Highland Park High School and then went on to the military service, but they went downstate that year. So Andy walked into my training gym. I'm like, hey, Andy, what are you doing today? He goes, I'm not much. I go, you want to come play in an AAU tournament? He said, yeah, sure, I'll play with you. So I picked him up. That was Saturday. We play our games. So Sunday, Andy Linton is guarding LeBron James.
Whoops.
Whoops.
Yeah. And so
Sorry.
we're up by 10. And I ran a diamond and one against him. And LeBron was just so smart, and he went into the post. So he posted up and just started playing point guard out of the high post. And we ended up losing by 3. So LeBron James, the best player I ever coached against. And it's not close, in case you're wondering. He was awesome.
Yeah, that probably takes the cake, right?
Yeah. And then on the girls' side, oh man. Now, well, the best player I've coached is Jewel Lloyd.
Yeah.
For Team USA. And the most creative player that I've ever coached, boy or girl, is Aubrey Galvin, who's signed at Vanderbilt University.
Yeah.
That's only, and if you guys, I would encourage, as a fan of basketball, I'd encourage anybody, if you get a chance, go watch her play in high school. She is fabulous to watch, and she is I'm kind of a free spirit, more of kind of like I'm very artsy in how I coach. I'm very like, it's not like I have a system. It's more like I kind of create it as I go. And her mind is like that also. So we really get along well, and it's really just been a joyride coaching her, and she's just been unbelievable to coach. So, but Jewel's probably the greatest player I've ever coached, man or woman. She's just absolute professional, kind person, absolute warrior, and clutch. She's just clutch, So
All right, so in your AAU days, I'm sure you've had a lot of these, but maybe what's one of the worst travel stories you've had in your AAU coaching days?
wow. Travel stories.
Maybe like a nightmare, you missed a flight, or the hotel was awful, or
I coached women's professional teams against colleges, and that's probably like a better story.
all right.
So we'd get these women that wanted to go in the WNBA, and then they brought me in to train them. A guy named Mike White, who ran Adidas basketball for a while, and so he'd get these women together. I coached Coco and Kelly Miller, who played at Georgia. They were all Americans, played the WNBA. They came and played for me. Morgan Valley, who I coached in Vermont, who was a McDonald's All-American, she came and played for me, and she played at University of Connecticut and won 3 national championships. So we'd put these teams together, and usually those teams would go get beat, but we wouldn't. We'd go beat North Carolina, Duke. We were giving out beatings. Pat Summit, they cheated. Those refs cheated. They beat us, but so we travel through the night on a charter bus, and we're going across the Chesapeake Bridge in a windstorm. I was sure that this was going to be my last moment on the planet. I mean, that bridge was swaying, that bus was swaying. I was like, oh boy.
And you probably don't feel very good at the time. You're like, this is miserable. Yeah.
And we had a girl who had a concussion at the time, and Mike, who's traveled with us, and we're stuck in Boston, and he's like, he goes, hey, Juana Brown. He goes, hey, Juana, could I borrow your concussion, please? And that was like one of the greatest lines ever. We were just all laughing because we were just all miserable, tired, travel. So good times.
Right. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, good times.
All right. So the best place in your travels, maybe it's a sneaky place. Like you went somewhere and you're like, I don't know if this is going to be good. But the best place in your travels, you got something to eat.
Man. Well, I'm going to tell you this. Chicago's got great food. Chicago is as a competitor in the world in that. It's one of the best. There's so much great food here, guys. And I've a guy that's traveled around. The food is great in Chicago. So let's just be clear on that.
For sure.
In Sydney, Australia, they have great like Asian food, Thai food, Japanese. Yeah, it was great. And I love Sydney. If you guys can get to Sydney, go to Sydney. It's a beautiful city. My buddy Damian Cotter, who now coaches with the Bulls, he was working there because I met him. He came and looked at players when I was training players here in the States. So I went over there and stayed with him for a little while and in Sydney, and it was just, the food was great. I love the food in Sydney. A great city.
Right. Just to show that this is the After the Timeout podcast, we have to have a question like this. If you could have an exotic animal as a pet, what kind of animal would it be? The hard hitter one right here.
Maybe like a hawk, maybe a bird. I don't know. We're dog people. Me and my wife are dog people. We've got 3 dogs. So I love dogs. So a wolf, maybe.
Okay. Wolf, that'd be cool.
I like it.
Oh, yeah. All right, last one here. We have a changing landscape in high school basketball, but maybe a trend or a change you'd like to see coming up in the future.
In high school sports, high school basketball.
High school basketball, yeah.
I think the shot clock is going to add a lot of value. I think it's going to help. I think it's going to really help. I think the shot clock is such a tool, and once you learn how to coach with the shot clock, it gives you some edges, but it also forces you to make your players better because they got to be able to play quicker. So I think it's really going to help basketball in Illinois as they add the shot clock.
It only took forever, right? My goodness.
Well,
Me and John have been talking about this for 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, my teams have never needed a shot clock because we just press.
Yeah, exactly. You guys don't need it. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, mine won't either because we could throw up a bad shot with the best of them in 5 seconds. We don't need
no doubt. Yeah, we can chuck it if we need to, right?
We want to thank you again for joining us. Todd and I were messaging back and forth during the episode, and we could have spent just the episode on certain individual questions. So I know this is one our listeners will get a lot from. So thanks for jumping on with us today and helping us share the game.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. If there's any way I can help, and if there's any young coaches or people that want to contact me, I get it at this point in my life. My job is to serve others. And so anything I can do, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I really appreciate this opportunity, and anything I can do to help in any way, that's what I'm trying to do. So thank you, guys.
And I got to click the record, don't I? Yeah.
That would. Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the IBCA. Please be sure to rate us on whatever platform you are listening and give us a 5-star rating. For more show content and updates, please follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout. As always, thank you for listening. Tune in next time for more content on the court, off the court, and anything in between.